What is up everyone, Movieworm back again with another video, and today is going to be me ranking all 91 movies that I watched from the year 2021. So all these films that I'm talking about here did come out last year and I watched some great movies. I've done a top 10 list. So when I get to the top 10, I will be quicker than all the other movies, but I'm not going to spend too much time on these movies anyway, because there's a lot to get through and the video will just be absolutely massive. This is probably the biggest video I've ever attempted on this channel, if not it's one of them. So I'm pretty nervous how it might go, but I'm sure it'll be fine. Now, some of these films are going to be low on my list that you might have liked, and some of them are going to be high on the list that you didn't like. It doesn't mean my list is right, it doesn't mean your list is right, it's just opinion. So if I've put a movie low down that you liked above some other movies that you disliked, it's just my opinion, it's just a bit of fun. And if we all had the same list, it'd be a pretty boring world to live in, wouldn't it? So without further ado, I'm just going to get into it now with the 91st ranked movie on this list, which for me was the worst movie I watched this year. So at 91, we do have Bliss, which dropped on Amazon Prime. This stars Owen Wilson and Salma Hayek, and they are two really great actors, but they couldn't even save this dull bore fest. I hated the way it was filmed. It looked so depressing, and it was a good idea for a story that just was executed horribly. It just didn't work for me at all. First 20 minutes was a good little build-up. Everything after that, I hated watching this film. The cinematography was awful. The story was just got me really down. I couldn't wait for it to end. I just didn't like this film at all. It was so bad. And I did give this a higher score than a couple of the films that are coming next, but on reflection, this definitely deserved a lower score. So Bliss was just a pretty awful film and deserves its place at 91st spot here. And this is the worst 2021 release for me, so that is Bliss. Next up, we have Tom and Jerry. I was kind of looking forward to this because I used to watch this as a kid. Tom and Jerry can be fun, but here it was just really just a terrible story about this hotel owner who he hires Tom to get rid of Jerry because he's infesting the hotel, and there's been sightings of this mouse, which is Jerry. But the animation was crystal clear of Tom and Jerry, and it just contrasted from the real world. It didn't work very well, kind of like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It didn't quite work as well with the live action mixed in. It just was very contrast. The story here, like some of the characters will send messages out there like you can cheat to get to the top of the career ladder and it's fine. It sent out some really bad messages to kids in my opinion, but it wasn't really a fun movie. The dialogue was awful. The characters were terrible. Tom and Jerry didn't really go at it that much. When they did, it was probably the best parts of the film, but there wasn't enough of that for me, and they kind of work together in the end, which isn't what Tom and Jerry's about for me. So yeah, Tom and Jerry, Chloe Grace Moretz made a bad decision to come into this movie, and I know she starred in another bad movie supposedly this year, which I haven't watched, but yeah, Tom and Jerry wasn't great for me, unfortunately. So that is number 90. Next up is Willys Wonderland, starring Nicolas Cage. And this is basically about him having to look after this attraction overnight. But he's sort of tricked into it because overnight everything comes alive and tries to kill him. But he doesn't say anything throughout this film. So you got Nicolas Cage there, and he's like one of the most out there actors, and you decide for him to say nothing. Just didn't work for me. Thought the villains in this, like the puppet effects and stuff, were terrible. When on paper this is my type of film, but it just didn't work. Nicolas Cage, when he starts taking out these demons and stuff, wasn't really working at all either. It just looked stupid and terrible. The characters are awful. Beth Grant's in this film. That tells you everything. My worst actress of all time. I just hate it and everything I see her in. So Willys Wonderland wasn't a great film at all, unfortunately. Next up is a Netflix film called There's Someone Inside Your House. Now this looked like it had a great movie poster, my type of film, a slasher coming to Netflix, and we just had the Fear Street films, so I thought it's Netflix going into this territory now. Slasher films, I'm all up for it. And this is basically about a killer who makes a mask of his next victim, so you know who he's going to kill next, and the victim is sort of seeing themselves in the mask. But cool concept, great opening scene. Everything after that was awful. Nothing worked in this film. Characters that you hate, just don't care if they die, and then the over explanation at the end from the killer when he's revealed, who I did guess, by the way. It's like in real life this wouldn't play out with this killer explaining everything, why he's doing it for like 10 minutes. It was just the worst type of Scream movie you could ask for. It was pretty bad. So yeah, There's Someone Inside Your House is next. Next up we have the first movie I watched in 2021, and that was Outside the Wire. Basically, Anthony Mackie and I forgot the other guy's name, but they sort of, it's a future where robots are fighting alongside humans. I think that's what it was. It was a very forgetful film, to be honest. I thought the robots looked kind of good. Anthony Mackie, I liked it when he was losing his shit in this film, but ultimately it was just very bland, generic, and by the end of the movie I was just not caring. It was just a very, very forgetful film, and I don't know what Anthony Mackie was doing here. He is the standout, but ultimately not a great film at all. So Outside the Wire is next. Next up we have Black Friday. This is a film on paper that I thought could be really great. It had Bruce Campbell in, Devon, the guy off Final Destination, Devon Sawyer, is it? And I thought, you know what, I've been enjoying him in the Chucky series. Him and Bruce Campbell, this could work, about a zombie outbreak in a toy store. Yeah, it was just nothing. Didn't give me anything at all. The zombies looked okay. There was a few good kills in there, but characters you don't care about. Once again, that seems to be the problem with a lot of these films at the bottom here. Bruce Campbell was actually a bad character in this. I don't think he brought anything to the film whatsoever. And you have seen this movie, maybe not in this toy store or anything, but you've seen this film before. It's just a generic zombie outbreak movie, and in the middle there's this big discussion between the characters, and it just acts as filler. It's like, what are these guys even talking about? They're talking about having wage increases and stuff instead of the actual zombie outbreak that's happening outside this cafeteria room that they're in. Bad movie, didn't work for me at all, bored me to death. That is Black Friday. Next up we have a movie that is on the bottom of a lot of people's top 10 worst list. If not, it's near the bottom, and that is Thunder Force. Now the reason it's a little bit higher than these is, as ridiculous as it is, I got a little bit more fun out of this compared to them, just because of how bad it is. It's that bad. It's kind of good in places. Melissa McCarthy, Octavia Spencer being superheroes. What else was going to happen here apart from absolute travesty, really? But like I said, there was a couple of funny moments. The Crabman character, with just this guy walking around with crab arms, and he's half a crab. Yeah, this is how ridiculous this film is. There's some really bad dialogue here as well. Like, Melissa McCarthy will tell a joke to someone, and he thinks it's serious when she says it. She will say something like, "Oh no, that was an April Fool joke, but a late April Fool joke." Honestly, that is the dialogue we get in here. So yeah. And Octavia Spencer as well, her daughter's reading this big thick book about physics or something, and Octavia Spencer says to her, "What are you reading there?" And she goes, "Oh, this book on physics." And she goes, "Oh, that's one of my favourites. I've read it 3 times. Mind if I borrow it after you so I can read it a 4th time?" I don't care how smart you are, no one does that. So yeah, Thunder Force, pretty bad Netflix movie for me. So that was next. Now next up, we have a bit of a big release that I was looking forward to, and this actually made my top 5 most disappointing movies list, and that is The Conjuring 3, The Devil Made Me Do It. What I didn't like about this movie was the jump scares, and now I knew James Wan went on board and that was going to be a problem, but everything beyond that was just, they made some bad choices with the characters here. Now, I did like what they were trying to do, incorporating this true story into the Conjuring world, but Vera Farmiga is like a superhero in this. She goes to this crime scene, touches a few things like the floor and the trees in this forest, and then sees everything that happened. And instead of a ghost detective of trying to find out what's happened, they make her into a superhero here. Didn't work for me, and it's trying to be serious at the same time. Didn't like this film at all. I liked the first two. This one was pretty bad. So that is The Conjuring 3, The Devil Made Me Do It. Next up is Space Jam: A New Legacy. I really like the first Space Jam movie. I think it's really fun. That is another film that worked better than Tom and Jerry with the live action and the animation. Here, I just thought Warner Brothers were up their own arse. They were celebrating their own success here by putting all these characters from the Warner Brothers films in, and when the basketball match happens at the end, it's just impossible to watch without looking at the crowd, because they've got Pennywise there. I think Neo's in the crowd, Alex from the Clockwork Orange and stuff, and that sounds kind of cool, but really, it's just so distracting, and it looked terrible. It was just a big CGI mess with Halloween costumes everywhere. I didn't like Space Jam: New Legacy at all, really. I thought it was pretty bad. So yeah, that is next. Next up, we have a Shudder release called The Power. Now, I thought this sounded really like up my street. It takes place in a hospital, and there's a blackout, really, which is got a creepy concept in itself. First 30 minutes was really good. Well, the main actress done a great job. She looked like she looked the part, but like with this very unique look about her. It takes place in 70s London, I think. But as the film went on, it just got really ridiculous and stupid, like a lot of generic horror movies do, unfortunately. And the way the story played out just didn't work for me at all. So that is The Power. Next up, we have Blood Red Sky. Out of all the films on this list, this is one of them where I thought it sounded like the greatest concept for me. About a bunch of vampires on a jet, on a plane there. And I would have thought, wow, that is a great concept. Ultimately, though, it was pretty bad. I mean, it's just vampire mayhem ensuing on this plane, but it's just a bit of a mess and gets very, very repetitive. The movie is on way longer than it should be. And I thought some of the terrorists in this film were kind of, badass and stuff, but yeah, it's just become a bit of a mess. And I don't think they knew where they wanted to go with the story here, unfortunately. Didn't really work for me at all. I wish it did. This is what I really wanted to like, but just again, another bland Netflix horror movie. Next up is A Boy Called Christmas. This is one I watched just last month. Obviously with Christmas time and stuff, but it felt like a very cheap movie. The costume design was bad. It's a story about Kris Kringle and the origins of Christmas, which could have been really great actually, but yeah, it just felt like they rushed this movie, got it out in Christmas time. And there was some emotional story beats that I didn't feel anything for, that they asked me to. A character does a terrible decision later on in the film, and the story was just going in directions that I just didn't need to go in. Like I said, a good little concept of Kris Kringle and the origins of Christmas, but it just didn't work out that way for me, unfortunately. And it just felt like a very cheap movie. So the best part of this was Maggie Smith telling the story to these children, but she's in the film for like 10 minutes. So yeah, that is A Boy Called Christmas. Next up we have The Dig, which wasn't too bad of a movie. It was just ultimately more boring. I didn't really get into this story at all about them digging for this artifact at the back of this house during the war times. That was it basically. I think Ralph Fiennes was in this movie. Who's a great actor, by the way, but a lot of people don't appreciate the end of the film because a romance story ensues with two side characters, and I actually thought that was the best part of the movie. So if it wasn't for that, I probably may have had this lower just because how boring it was. But yeah, just a very, very forgettable movie, and that is The Dig. Now next up is a big release, and when I was talking about the start of the video, a lot of people probably like this some films here that are low down. This is one of them. That is Godzilla vs Kong. I was looking forward to this after seeing Godzilla King of the Monsters, but it was the human part of this movie that just ruined it for me. Now everyone says, well, we only want the Godzilla and Kong action anyway, fine, but if you're going to do a lot of, why don't you just do that then? If you're going to put these story elements into it involving the humans, make sure they're interesting enough and done right. They were just terrible, and King Kong talking to this little girl and communicating with her, I couldn't get on board with that whatsoever. Some of the fight scenes were really good though, and it looked impressive at times. Godzilla and Kong, they did look impressive, but for a big Hollywood budget action film, I expected a little bit more from this, and the story is where it ultimately failed for me. Next up, we have the Forever page. This is a concept that should be amazing. This should be a brilliant franchise, but I don't think they've ever really got it right. I don't really like any of these movies, to be honest, but this could be the best. If not, it's one of the best out of them. I mean, it's definitely better than the first page, you know, that prequel movie we got, the fourth one. It's probably better than the first movie. But this is the Forever page, where it just goes on, like the page happens and then these characters decide to continue it on forever. And the world suddenly becomes just this big place of mayhem and chaos. But for some reason, this concept has just never really worked for me in any of these movies. And here was the same. I really couldn't get into this film at all, to be honest. Didn't really like the characters. Just nothing. Just a bit of a mess. And a very repetitive film. People just causing mayhem around the world. Turned into a bit of a road trip film. It wasn't. I just didn't enjoy it too much, to be honest. So, as the Forever page. Next up was another pretty disappointing film for me, and that is Venom 2. Disappointing because I did like the first one. But here, by the end of it, I just didn't want to hear Venom's voice again. Tom Hardy is definitely miscast. He could have been such a better Marvel character than this. And he's kind of stuck with Venom now. And what I don't like about it is because you don't see Tom Hardy when he becomes Venom. It's just this big CGI blob thing. The story was all over the place. They tried to explore the love interest of Tom Hardy's character, Eddie Brock, with his old wife, like they did in the first film. And it's like, this isn't going to work out. Why are we doing this again? It's just a very, very bland movie, and it felt like a 2000s superhero film instead of a step up 20 years later, like all the brilliant Marvel films we get from that studio. Sony just hasn't quite caught up yet, apart from another film on his list later on, which I will get into, but like the likes of this just felt years behind. So that is Venom 2. Next up is Paranormal Activity, next of kin. Now, this is a franchise where I always think the next one is going to be terrible and bad, and then I'll lose interest, but they always surprise me. Even the last one, Ghost Dimension, I kind of got a kick from it, but ultimately it has happened now with this one, part 7, and this takes place in this snowy mountain where this girl has to find her long lost family, with this Amish family living in these mountains. But it just didn't work for me. I didn't like the location, and there was jump scares every 2 minutes that I seen coming a mile away. And all the characters in this were dull. I seen the ending coming a mile off. Very predictable movie. And we've seen it all before, unfortunately, with this Paranormal Activity franchise. But I do get a kick out of them. But here, I just got a little bit fed up. So that is Paranormal Activity, next of kin. Next up is Home Sweet Home Alone. I know a lot of people have been putting this on their top 10 worst movie lists as well. This... yeah, and what I didn't like about this is these people who break into the kid's house are good people. So when they're getting hurt, it's just awkward to watch. You don't really root for the young kid in this. In fact, he's more of a bad guy than them two, because he sort of took something that belonged to them, or they think he did. Yeah, I mean, this kid was good in Jojo Rabbit. I forgot his name, I'm really sorry. Is it Max something? Or is his name Max in the movie? I can't remember. But here, I just don't think he was that good. He's never ever Kevin McAllister in a million years. If you want a good Home Alone movie, just watch the first two. This was a very lazy script, and Disney just played it really, really safe. It was just like they said, we'll just put this on streaming. People will watch it because it's called Home Alone. And they were right, because that's what drew me in. It just being called a Home Alone movie. But it was pretty bad. So that is Home Sweet Home Alone. Next up is a little bit of a surprise for some people probably, and that is the French Dispatch. Now, this is a Wes Anderson film. He's not a director I'm very familiar with, although I did really love the Grand Budapest Hotel. I kind of like the Fantastic Mr. Fox, but I think I have to rewatch it. But they're the only two films I've ever seen from him. So I really wanted to like this, because he is a director I want to get into. I really appreciated his filmmaking here. Great, great cinematography, everything. I love the way he directed the film. And it's 3 stories from a newspaper magazine, and that's shutting down, and they just picked 3 stories from it. First story was really good, got into it, and the second 2 stories were just really dull. and boring, and I just couldn't get into them whatsoever, and that's where the movie started to go downhill and lose my interest really quickly. And even with the quirky filmmaking and stuff, it just couldn't save it for me, and it just wasn't for me. It hasn't put me off any other Wes Anderson films. I'm still going to check out some of them, definitely this year, hopefully, because he's just a director I want to get into. But The French Dispatch, maybe on rewatch I'll appreciate it a bit more, but even some Wes Anderson fans have said that it's not his best, so that is The French Dispatch. Next up is The Matrix Resurrections, which is a massive disappointment for me. I seen the trailer for this and thought it looked like the greatest movie trailer of all time, so I started to get hyped for The Matrix 4. I'm a big fan of the first one, I really like the second one, but this is on par with the third one for me of being a terrible movie. Lana Wachowski has some good ideas here, but ultimately they're more bad than good. It's a mess of a film, it becomes very complex, and by the end I just didn't care. There was people next to me in the cinema asleep. I just wanted it to end. I didn't enjoy it whatsoever. There was some good action scenes. Neo and Trinity being back together was awesome, but Keanu Reeves didn't even look like he wanted to be there. He felt like he didn't believe in this project. That is The Matrix Resurrections. Okay guys, we are at number 71 here. Now what I will say is every movie from this point on is something I got a kick out of. So I did get a little bit of enjoyment from a lot of these movies. That doesn't mean necessarily that they're bad if they're lower down from here on, but obviously the ones further on are better than them. But coming in at number 71, we do have Yes Day. Now this was a little bit of a generic Netflix movie. A very simple concept, and it's kind of like that movie Yes Man, where a family must say yes to everything to have a little bit of fun, because the dad's always at work and stuff, the kids are always on the phone, so they have a yes day where they have to say yes to everything, and it brings the family together and stuff. Now it's just a very easy to watch movie, but there was some fun moments here, especially when the family, you know, just having fun together basically. I thought it was decent. Jennifer Garner was really good as the mother here, and I got a kick out of it. So that is Yes Day. Next up we have Below Zero. This is about two criminals. I watched this very early on in the year who break out of this prison van, or they're trying to break a criminal out of this prison van, and all the other criminals are in the van. I think something like that, but it all takes place in like this big icy city basically. Well, it's snowing everywhere, but a lot of it, there's a moment where it takes place on an ice rink as well. So it had some good action moments, some very tense moments. I think this is I can't remember where, it's a foreign movie anyway. It might have been Sweden or something. But again, forgettable. But there was some cool scenes here. But it was one of the first movies I watched, so my memory is very vague on it. But I remember thinking it was okay. So that is Below Zero. Next up we have Spiral from the Book of Saw. Now this is a film that I was really looking forward to, just because I love horror. I liked the Saw franchise, and it looked like it was going in a new direction with Chris Rock writing this and starring in it. Samuel L. Jackson was on board, so I was like, yeah, I'm up for this. And ultimately it just felt like another Saw movie to me. And some of the cinematography and the location design here felt really empty at times. Chris Rock was good in parts, but over the top in others. He just was overacting at times. Some good kills though, some great traps, especially the first one. And there was another one where this guy's fingers are pulled. Might have been a woman, I can't quite remember now. I would watch this again, especially when I was doing a Saw marathon. I don't think it's a bad movie, just a little bit of a disappointing one. So that is Spiral from the Book of Saw. Next up we have Red Notice. Now this was a really fun movie from Netflix, but it's a bit low down here because it just felt very, very safe, and it was very silly at times as well, but it was just a very, very easy watch, and it had 3 great stars in it: Ryan Reynolds, The Rock, and Gal Gadot. And when they're all together on screen, that is the best part of this movie. I think it's about an art thief and this other guy's trying to stop him, The Rock, but they have to team up to take down Gal Gadot, who is the ultimate art thief. Ryan Reynolds stole some of the best lines here, like he usually does. He's playing his usual self that he has been known since Deadpool, really. But decent movie, easy watch. I would watch it if they do another one, because it does leave on a bit of a cliffhanger where it says we're going to make a number 2. So I'd be up for it, really. Very easy watch. In fact, probably the easiest watch of the year. That is Red Notice. Next up we have Cop Shop. A lot of people seem to like this movie a lot more than me. It felt very generic and a very straightforward movie. Gerard Butler. It's the ultimate Gerard Butler movie, really. We just get kind of mediocre films from him about these two guys who are trying to kill each other, and they're both in the same police station because they're assassins. But what saved this movie for me is the last 30 minutes where this other guy called Anthony Lamb, who's this other assassin, breaks into the police station trying to kill one of the other assassins, and he is just one of my favourite characters out of any film I've seen this year. He absolutely saved this film, and that's where it really did pick up. He was awesome. Yeah, he's a really sinister, evil character who loves to mess around and joke that he's going to kill people and stuff. Thought he was awesome, and that was what really made me put this movie a little bit higher, his character. But overall, it's watchable, decent enough. The main protagonist, though, she just said the word fuck too many times. Like, she was really forcing it out. Like, she was like, don't fucking move. I fucking mean it. Now put the fucking gun down. And it was all the time, and it was just way over the top. Decent movie. It was alright. Next up, we have The Muppet Haunted Mansion. I just wish this could have been a little bit more serious, but goes for the ultimate. It goes more for comedy. Like The Muppet Christmas Carol, where it's comedy, very well balanced with serious tone. But here, it just went a bit out there. The human characters are acting really silly in this, along with the Muppets. But Pepe, who is the main Muppet in this, along with Gonzo, was the best character in this by a mile. He made me laugh so many times. So yeah, it was just an easy watch, 60-minute Muppet movie that landed on Disney Plus, based on the the House on the Haunted Hill type movie where they have to stay the night. It was okay. I had fun with it. Next up, we have Halloween Kills, which was on my most disappointing movies list. But this did have some good going for it. I loved it when they went back to the 70s and tried to recreate the Halloween night from 1978, the original movie. Michael Myers was badass in this. Probably one of the best versions of Michael Myers I've seen. He is absolutely brutal here. Some great kills in this movie. But where it does fail is the story and the other side characters. The Anthony Michael Hall, I think his name is, from the Breakfast Club's in this, who I remember from the 80s. He always played the teenage character, and he's just so annoying. I really wanted Michael Myers to kill him early because he was just getting on my nerves, but the movie asked us to attach ourselves to him, and it became very, very repetitive because I thought I just wanted Michael Myers going around killing everyone for the whole film, but it does become repetitive after 30 minutes, and I was just like, oh. But it did have a little bit of good going for it, but the bad did outweigh it, and there was a story involving this other escaped mental patient that just didn't work whatsoever. But it was okay. I think I give it a 6 out of 10. That is Halloween Kills. Next up, we have Red Dot. Now, this was a really cool concept, and it did work for me in a lot of places. This couple who go and stay in the wilderness on this mountain, and this sniper is sort of aiming down the sights at them for some reason. They don't know why, but they can be taken out at any minute, and it becomes like a game of cat and mouse. Really cool concept. It did feel a little bit bland in places, but the ending, they went for it, and boy did it shock me. It was one of the best endings to a film I've seen all year. This just landed on Netflix. It's another foreign movie. I can't remember where from. I'm really sorry, but it was okay. I got a kick out of it, and it did work for me in a lot of places. So that is Red Dot. Next up is Those Who Wish Me Dead. Angelina Jolie has to help save this young boy from these two assassins who are trying to kill him because he knows something. All the while, this forest fire is ensuing around them. It felt like a very safe action movie. I just wanted a little bit more from it, but even by the end, they didn't really go anywhere with it. But Angelina Jolie put a good performance in. The guy from Game of Thrones who plays the one who what's his name? I forgot his name, but you know that guy. He plays the bad guy and everything. Littlefinger. He's in this as one of the assassins. I thought he was really good and creepy, but ultimately it just felt like a normal thriller movie that didn't really do anything special, and a movie that I've kind of seen the same type of tone from before. So that is Those Who Wish Me Dead. Next up is Batman The Long Halloween Part 1. I was sort of misled with the title of this, thinking it was all going to take place on Halloween in a Batman animated film, and I thought that would be amazing. But it does take place over virtually every holiday. That's why it's called The Long Halloween. So, yeah, I mean, it's about a killer going around killing people on the holidays. I really did like Part 1. with the Joker and stuff. So yeah, that is next up. And next up after that we have Batman The Long Halloween Part 2. I just sort of like the outcome of this. I didn't guess the ending, and that's why it's just here above Part 1. It does feel like a lot of the villains are shoehorned in here, but this is where the story really picked up for me, and it was just a little bit better than the first part. I love the whole Two-Face sort of side story we have going on here as well with Harvey Dent and stuff. And I really like the way Batman was working with Jim Gordon, you know, to get to the bottom of this, and hopefully that's what we're going to get from the new Batman film. This felt like there was a lot more detective work involved in. So yeah, that is Batman The Long Halloween Part 2. Next up we have In the Heights. This is a film that a lot of people seem to love this year. I'm not really a big musical fan, but there are some musicals higher on this list, or a musical higher on this list, that really did work for me. This worked for me with the songs and stuff. It was just the story and the characters I couldn't really latch onto. The story was just about this guy trying to get out this neighbourhood, and I couldn't really take to the main character. But the songs, the choreographed dance scenes were all great. And I watched this on 4K and it looked brilliant. The cinematography is on point. Looks so pristine. Oh, yeah. Decent movie. I didn't love it as much as anyone else. That is In the Heights. Next up we have Malcolm and Marie, another early release. And this is basically Zendaya and John David Washington coming home from a night out because he's a movie director and he's won an award or something. Or he's waiting for the critics' response. So they go home and await the response. But basically they're just bickering through this, and by the end I was just getting a little bit tired of the bickering, but I did like the way it was filmed in black and white. Zendaya put a great performance in, so did John David Washington. Zendaya looked amazing in this, very unique looking, the way they done with the costume design and stuff, and it was really working for me until about halfway through, and it just become a little bit tiresome, and it's like, oh, why do I care about these two arguing anymore? But there was a lot of good things going for it. Like I said, half the movie worked, and then it just started to get a little bit. So that is Malcolm and Marie. Next up we have Don't Breathe 2. Now I was a bit nervous going into this because it asked us to get on board with the bad guy from the first one, and yeah, it was kind of hard to adjust to that, and he's kind of looking after this little girl in this one, but the people he goes up against are worse than him, so you do get on board a little bit, but I just thought it was asking a lot from the viewer there after watching the first one, which is made this guy out to be such a terrible person. There's some really good kills in here, some really shocking moments, but it wasn't as good as the first one. So that is Don't Breathe 2. Next up we have Cherry, starring Tom Holland, who is miscast in this film in my opinion, but there was a lot of good going for this film. I loved it when he was robbing the banks and stuff, and he becomes a little bit of a drug addict after being in the army and stuff like that, and him and his girlfriend are just really desperate for money, so he goes around robbing these banks. But he's great at robbing banks basically. But what the direction here is where it fails, because every single scene they're trying something new with the director, and it's just, what are you doing? Like, why does Tom Holland having something checked in his rectum have to be this big mad cinematography moment, this big, I mean, even when he's robbing a bank, it's just like the stuff on the walls that shouldn't be there, but it's just trying to show off. I just thought the directors were a little bit up their own arse here, who've made great films like Endgame and stuff. So why they decided to do this, which is just a generic story of this guy robbing banks, it didn't need all this mad cinematography and filmmaking. That is Cherry, but it was an enjoyable story. Apart from that, I did like it. So that is Cherry. Next up we have The Map of Tiny Perfect Things, which is a movie that plays on that stuck in the loop type scenario about these two people who are stuck in the same loop and every day is the same, kind of like Groundhog Day, and they fall in love, or they're attracted to each other. One of them wants to stay in the loop because there's no consequences every day when they wake up, and the other one wants to get out of it, and there's a bit of fantasy involved of how they have to get out of it, involving this map and stuff. So Catherine Newton was really great in this. She was really good in the movie Freaky as well. A really good actress, I feel. This was a decent movie. I really did. I actually really enjoyed this one. So that is The Map of Tiny Perfect Things. Next up is Coming to America, and I've seen this on a few people's worst movies list. But I thought this was kind of fun, actually. I didn't hate it as much as anyone else, anywhere near. It was good, it was good to explore Eddie Murphy's character again here, Prince Akeem. Where it ultimately failed was they sort of take out something that happened in the first movie. It didn't happen in the first film and put it in here to make the story work. Thought it was very, very lazy writing, but it had its fun moments. I didn't dislike this film as I was watching it. I was having fun with it. I can see why people who are hardcore fans of the original Coming to America, don't like this film, and it does have reason to not like it. But for me, it worked. I watched Coming to America for the first time last year, and I'm not like a big hardcore fan of that film, so maybe that's why this one worked for me a little bit better than some people. So that is Coming to America. Next up, we have The Courier, starring Benedict Cumberbatch, who must work with this Russian spy in order to take down the Soviet Union, I think. It all takes place in the 60s with the ongoing war and stuff. I really like the friendship that these two had together, these two main characters, and working together. It is a hearter story about friendship. Good true story. Keeps you suspensed all the way through. I just thought at times it was nothing really too much happening, but you're not going to get any action or anything like that. It's just a drama story all the way through. But it did have a lot of great moments. But really, it was ultimately them two connecting with the friendship that I really did like, and good to see them working together, for the ultimate of good. So that is The Courier. Next up, we have Escape Room: Tournament of Champions. Escape Room is another movie that I watched for the first time last year. Kind of like the movie Saw, in a way, where these characters are put into this room, they've got to get out of it, but if they don't get out, they're dead for good. Like escape rooms that you can go and visit now in any city, really. It's kind of like that, but deadly ones. And I thought some of the rooms here were really well designed. I don't think it was as good as the first movie, but it weren't far away. However, the setup is another lazy writing scenario where all these characters come together on this train in New York, and then it turns into this escape room. And it's just like, how would all these characters be on this train in the same place at the same time? They banked on that a lot. But just the escaping of the rooms is what really gave me a kick of this movie. It's a very easy watch and a fun time. So that is Escape Room: Tournament of Champions. Next up, we have Fear Street Part 1, 1994. A slasher movie from Netflix, which had a great start, by the way. I did like this film. I thought it was a decent slasher. Some good moments. And there's a whole backstory here of why all this town is cursed, which was really clever, I thought. It was the main characters I couldn't really get on board with, which is why it's this low down. I just didn't like any of them, to be honest. But the whole concept and the story and why this town is cursed is what done it for me. And there's some really good kills in here. It's a 7 out of 10 slasher film. Nothing more, really. Next up, we have Fear Street Part 3, 1666. So this is a prequel to 1994, and another one which I'm going to speak to in a minute, of how the whole town become cursed and why it's happening. And it takes place in, this town thinks this girl is a witch, basically, and it's all about the revenge of the witch. This is why everything's happening. But it was weird to see the main characters from the first film playing different parts. But I did like them a lot more in this one than that first movie. It's like when they play different characters, you sort of like them a little bit more. So 1666 was just a little bit more interesting than 1994. Next up is the movie Pig, starring Nicolas Cage. I know a lot of people love this movie, but for me, it didn't quite hit them heights that a lot of people loved it for. I thought Nicolas Cage was decent in this, but there's some good moments as well. Like, as the story reveals itself, he's basically looking for his pig that's been stolen, but as the story reveals itself and about Nicolas Cage's past and what used to be before that, they were the more interesting parts of the film when it got to the third act and stuff. But ultimately it just fell a little bit flat for me, and I know a lot of people loved it way more than I did. I think on rewatch I might like this a little bit more, but for now I've just put it here on the ranking. Next up is Red Snow, a vampire film that takes place on Christmas time. This vampire novelist goes to stay in this cottage to get inspiration on her new book and be alone so she can concentrate, and she runs into these other vampires that are real, and one of them ends up staying with her and stuff. I thought the main protagonist was going to be really annoying, but as the film goes on, she really does grow on you. It's a fun movie, it's a horror comedy with some really decent moments, I feel, and some really funny moments at that. I got a kick out of this. I thought it was decent. That is Red Snow. Next up is The Woman in the Window, which was meant to be a cinema release, then it dropped on Netflix, and this is Amy Adams, who thinks she witnesses something across the street, kind of like that Rear Window story, of course, and she doesn't know if she's going crazy or if it really happened. All these characters are coming to see her and say, are you okay? Are you sure you've seen what you saw? And you don't quite know who to believe. Thought this was a really decent thriller. A lot of people don't like this movie. I don't know why. I just thought it was a nice thriller film to watch that was easy enough to get on board with. And I got a kick out of it. So I thought Amy Adams was great in this as well. So that is The Woman in the Window. Next up is Fear Street Part 2, 1978. Definitely the best of the trilogy for me. I love the way it all took place at this camp, which is a popular horror location for a movie to take place at, like Friday the 13th and stuff, The Burning, and this one definitely had the best kills. I thought it had the best characters. Sissy, is her name Sissy Spacek off Stranger Things was the main role in this. Thought she was like by far the best character out of all these three movies. But yeah, it was kind of brutal at times, all these kids getting picked off at this camp. And it just worked for me. Definitely the best slasher out of the three. And that's why it's a little bit higher than the other two. Next up is Army of Thieves, a prequel to Army of the Dead. And this took on the Sebastian character, who wasn't really one of my favourites from Army of the Dead. But here, he really grew on me. And it's just him doing some heists at the start of the zombie outbreak. It does feel like a totally different film because the zombies are hardly in this. But the heists are where it works best. Kind of like that movie Cherry, where this gang are doing all these heists is where I really grew on it, because they plan it out and then you see the plan unfold as the heist happens. And good little group of characters. There was only 5 main characters to get on board with here, unlike Army of the Dead, which had a lot, which is one of the problems of that film for me, because there was just too many stories going on, even though it is higher than this on the list. But I enjoyed this. I thought it was decent enough. So that is Army of Thieves. 45th place now, we have Resident Evil, Welcome to Raccoon City. Now, I was looking forward to this because I thought, you know, it's going to stick to the video game formula. This could be a great video game adaptation. And it worked for me in a lot of places, but it did feel like a missed opportunity as well. They got a lot of things right here and a lot of things that they should have improved on. Taking place in 98, basing around the first and the second game, really worked for me. The police station looked great, the mansion looked great, Chris and Claire were great characters, but Leon and Jill were really not. Leon was like getting sort of ripped into by everyone, and they were all like sort of making fun of him, and he's this kind of weak character, and I don't associate Leon like that. I think he's one of the best characters in the Resident Evil franchise. And Jill Valentine was just throwaway. I thought she was a really bad side character in the end. The zombies look really great. There was some great kills here. The CGI was kind of bad though, especially on the dogs. The dogs, like, they look good on the liquor, but on the dogs were some of the worst CGI I'd ever seen on the zombies. Dogs there. But some great moments from the games, like the zombie that turned around in the first one really slowly. They got that done well. It's a 7 out of 10 movie, but definitely better than all the other Resident Evil films for me. Next up we have The Night House, a brilliant performance from Rebecca Hall, and this dropped on Disney Plus. I did miss it at the cinema, and this is basically her boyfriend who's killed herself, and she has to deal with that. But she's seeing some things around this lake house where she stayed, where her husband killed herself not far away from it. I thought this was really creepy movie at times. Really good concept. It was the last 20 minutes where it did fail for me, but Rebecca Hall put a great performance in here, and I thought it was a really, really decent movie actually. But I just wish the ending played out a little bit better there. So that is The Night House. Next up is Centre. This was right up my street because it all takes place in the 80s in London. around the video nasty era, which was something I was really interested in as a kid. If a movie is banned, I want to see it just to see what the fuss is about. And this centers around a character who, her job is to censor these films and say whether they get passed in the UK or not, and she thinks she sees her long lost sister in one of these films, and she sets out to find her. I thought this had some great stuff going for it. There was an aspect ratio change that I really didn't notice was happening until about halfway through the ratio changing towards the end of the film there, which was great. It could have been a little bit more, but ultimately Prano Bailey Bond gave us a decent movie here. And, you know, I just wish it tries to be a little bit clever at times, and I just wish it would have been executed a little bit better. But overall, a decent movie. Not the best ending in the world, but decent enough. But if you are against censorship, this ending mightn't work for you like it didn't for me. But that is censor. Next up is Tomorrow War, which IGN gave it a 3 out of 10 to, so I was just going into this with no expectation whatsoever. It just dropped on Amazon Prime, but I got a kick out of it. This is basically about people from the future coming to the past to get people to come to the future and help them out, because ultimately these aliens that have took over, or these creatures, are going to win the war, and they need the help of everyone they can get, and Chris Pratt goes to the future to try and sort it out. Now, it was the third act where it really fell a bit flat for me, because there was some lazy writing in there. Things just being convenient for Chris Pratt to work out to save the world and stuff. But there was a lot of great action in here. You know, I thought it was a really, really good action movie that surprised the hell out of me. Going in with low expectations probably helped it a little bit, but I've heard a lot of people say they enjoyed this. So yeah, that is Tomorrow War. Next up is Luca, and a lot of people say this is the best animated movie of the year. It did look absolutely brilliant, to be honest, and it had a great concept going for it, about these underwater creatures who live on land. And it all takes place in Italy, at this little seaside town, but it captures the theme so well. It felt like you were actually, you know, transported to that location. Very, very colourful movie. It just felt like it played a little bit too safe for me, but overall I thought this was a really great animated movie, and you know, a really good job from Pixar. So I just do think there was some better animated films this year than this, but a really, really decent movie. I mean, like I said, all the movies from yesterday were ones that really done something for me, and they're all like, I know they're all merged together in the middle here, but this was a very enjoyable film. Next up is Jungle Cruise, starring The Rock. Now this, based on a ride, I think, in Disney World or something, which is weird. Disney have done this a few times now. It's just an adventure film that takes place in the jungle. Emily Blunt, The Rock, and Jack Whitehall, who is a surprise character for me in this. I thought he was really funny, and definitely stole the show. It's just basically them on this boat trying to look for something in the jungle. It tries to be a little bit like Indiana Jones, and I noticed a lot of similarities there that they were throwing in. But at the end of the day, it was a good action adventure movie. Little bit generic in places, but I enjoyed it. Decent enough. 7 out of 10 film. Next up is Dune. Yes, another bit of a surprise, low down on this list. I thought this was one of the best looking films of the year. And the first hour, it was all working for me. It was just, after that, I started to get a little bit lost. It was starting to get a little bit dull, dragging in places. But I just wish this movie was a little bit better for me, because I was expecting epicness. I was expecting the best film of the year. Maybe that's my fault on my part. But with the director and the cast, I just thought we were going to get something a little bit better here. Now, when part 2 comes out, I might appreciate this a little bit more. It's definitely a film I'm going to rewatch at some point. It's definitely better than the David Lynch film, and it is a really, really strong movie. But it just failed for me in the second 2 acts, and the pacing sort of caught up with it. But when I rewatch this again, this could go higher. You know, there's nothing to say it couldn't go higher. So number 39 is Dune, which did end up on my disappointing movies list, even though it's not a bad film. Next up is Encanto. This dropped on Disney Plus. I missed it at the cinema, and this is about a young girl whose whole family have magic powers except her. So who do you think's going to save the day out of all these characters? Yes, you guessed. Mirabelle, the main protagonist, of course. Sort of has to find herself in this movie, and she thinks she's sort of looked down on all the other family members and stuff. But the animation in this was fantastic. Like I say this about every Disney film, but they just get better and better. It was unbelievable to look at. It really was. Surprisingly, no villain in this movie. Now, I know Disney have sort of been threatening this a little bit because they always have villains with a good outcome or something turn them bad and there's a reason they're bad, but really deep down they're good in their hearts. I feel like Disney have been doing that the last few years, but here they didn't even have a villain. A few backstory villains, but not really a main villain of the movie, which was... I hope Disney don't go down this route now because they've had so many good ones in the past, like Jafar and Scar and stuff. So I really hope this isn't a new direction that they go in. They're playing it too safe, kind of like Home Alone, where the bad guys, you feel sorry for them. Stop it, Disney. Make some good villains. But overall, good music in this, great looking film, decent little story. I wish I would have liked it a little bit more because I was really looking forward to it, but it's still a good film. Next up we have Spencer, one of the best performances of the year from Kristen Stewart, playing Lady Diana here. This deals with a lot with mental health, gets its message across really well. Really well shot as well. Great score and composing from Johnny Greenwood here, which just goes so well together with Kristen Stewart's acting. You really do get the feel that this woman is struggling. It's not, I wouldn't say it's an entertaining film, but it's a gripping film. And one of the most unique ones on this list for sure. I wasn't looking forward to this at all. A film about the royal family just didn't interest me, but ultimately I came out of it very, very satisfied. So that is Spencer. Next up is an A24 film called Lamb. This is about a family who don't have a child, this couple, and they own a farm, and when this lamb gives birth, they decide to keep the lamb as their own child. And there's a lot of messages in here where you shouldn't really mess with nature, but it's a very mysterious film. I was just watching it going, what's going to happen next here? What's going on this farm? With this child they've took, it's just so strange. Don't want to give too much away, but by the end of the movie, it was one of the best moments of the year for me. I was just like, oh my god, holy shit. And I did, you know, there was a few unanswered questions for me, like this family member comes along and I was just like, what is the point of this character? But when I did look up the whole meaning of the film, it did answer some questions. I am still left scratching my head a little bit. I would like to rewatch this one, but the ending to this movie was well worth it. So that is Lamb. Next up is 8-Bit Christmas. This is about a kid who wants to get a Nintendo for Christmas in the 80s, the hottest thing out there. And that just is right up my street, really. I love video games, and there's a lot of video game stuff in here for certain people. Ultimately, it is more of an adventure film. It doesn't play too much on the video game aspect, but if you're a video game fan, there's enough in there for you. But this kind of reminded me of South Park with the kids in their woolly hats and the hoodies and stuff, going around on this quest to get this Nintendo. There's a lot of funny humour in there, funny witty dialogue, a lot of great moments, and it really did have a lot of heart. And it was I think this is my favourite Christmas movie released this year, so that is 8-Bit Christmas. Definitely worth a watch next year when you're looking for a Christmas film to look at. Next up is The Harder They Fall. I've seen this in a few people's top 10 list as well. This is a Tarantino-esque western with some really cool moments. It follows these two main characters who are rival members of this gang, and they are sort of, one of them is coming after the other one, but it's about two gangs ultimately fighting each other in the Wild West. Thought this movie looked great. It was one of the best looking Netflix movies that's been released, so pristine, and streaming it in 4K there. My main problem was the two main characters. Idris Elba didn't really play the villain well for me, in my opinion, and the other character, Jonathan Majors, he was doing this accent that really just weren't working for me. But all the side characters were great. There was some really well written dialogue, some really witty charisma characters in there, and some really cool moments in this movie. Like I said, it's Tarantino-esque, and there's a moment at the start of the film where this guy is shot and it says "the," and then he's shot again and it says "harder," and then the title comes up every time he gets shot, and I thought that was a great moment. One of the best movie moments of the year for me. But The Harder They Fall was a decent modern western, so that is next. Next up is another A24 film, The Green Knight. I didn't quite know what to think of this when I watched it, but the more I thought about it, the more I did appreciate how good it was, actually. There's a strong message in there of you have to face your fears at times, and it sees Dev Patel, this Green Knight character basically comes up and says, I need someone to strike me, and next year I will strike them the same, and he sort of cuts this Green Knight character's head off, and then Dev Patel has to go and face him the next Christmas so he can inflict the same damage on him. It'll all make sense when you watch it. I thought the Green Knight character looked amazing. The cinematography in this was... If I was going to do an award right now for my favourite cinematography of the year, the Green Knight would get it. The whole film looked amazing. So well shot. Locations were great. Dev Patel put a great performance in here. And the Green Knight was such a mysterious character. I really did enjoy this film, and upon rewatch, I think this could go higher. So, typical A24 film there, The Green Knight. Next up is one of my most surprising films of the year, because I expected not much from it at all, because it just dropped on Netflix there, and that is The Guilty, starring Jake Gyllenhaal. He is a dispatch officer who works for this... Well, he's been demoted, he's a cop, to this dispatch desk, and he has to sort of save this woman who's phoned them up and says, I've been kidnapped by my ex-husband, and he becomes obsessed with saving her. What's so great about this movie, it all takes place in the dispatch officer, in this dispatch desk, in this room, and you have to imagine scenarios. The whole camera is on Jake Gyllenhaal the whole time, and he puts one of the best performances I've ever seen him give in, I'm not gonna lie. Even though it's just this Netflix movie, he is amazing in this film. But what you don't see is the best part. You have to build the picture in your head, and it totally worked. It came across really well. So yeah, The Guilty, really, really great film. Next up is M. Night Shyamalan's Old. Now, I know a lot of people hate this film. It's a very mixed bag, I feel. A lot of people have said they like it. And this is basically about these people who go to this beach in the middle, you know, and that's kind of out the way, and start to age rapidly. So within 2 days, they're like 90 years old or something, and people start to die because they're just aging that much and getting diseases and illnesses and stuff. Very, very mysterious movie. It worked for me in a lot of places. There was some strange dialogue at times and some strange performances, but I thought I was interested in this film all the way through. I was like kind of thinking, what's going to happen here? I think the ending could have been a little bit more satisfying, but still got your typical M. Night Shyamalan ending. But for me, this was a decent movie, I thought. I don't get the hate for it, but that is people's opinions, of course, so that is Old. Next up is Rise of the Foot Soldier Origins, the 5th movie in this franchise, which is a prequel. I was really looking forward to this. I am a fan of the franchise, even though these films aren't the best. They're just very, you know, pick up and watch and then forget. They're just all straight to VOD and Blu-ray movies, aren't they? But this one actually hit the cinema, and I was shocked at how good it was. I thought there's no way they can make this 5th entry any better than what we've already had, but it was actually the best one since the first. Good introduction of Vinnie Jones here playing a new character. I thought he was a good introduction to the franchise. Craig Fairbrass doing his thing, just being this total arsehole basically. He was very, very sinister, but he just owns the screen every time he's on. And I like the way Tony Tucker got his own story here. So that is Rise of the Foot Soldier Origins. Next up we have Wrong Turn. Now this is a reboot of the original movie, and I actually think I like this one a little bit better than that original film. I like the new direction they went in. I thought it was going to go exactly the same way, but it doesn't. It actually goes in a different route. And it was kind of gripping and tense in a lot of places here. And the ending was amazing. I was just like, oh, is this really going to end this way? And then something happened and I was like, shit. So it was kind of an ending that misled you into something amazing. But overall, I really enjoyed Wrong Turn. I had great fun with it. Next up is Finch, kind of Castaway meets Chappie, in my opinion. This is a post-apocalyptic movie of Tom Hanks, who makes this robot so that when he dies, because he's dying, the robot can look after his dog. And it's just these 3 characters walking around this wasteland, basically. But there's some great dialogue here, some funny moments between the robot and Tom Hanks. I thought the robot was definitely the best character in this, but Tom Hanks leads the film really well. Came out of nowhere really on Apple TV, and it's quite high on this list, so that is Finch. Next up was my most anticipated film of the entire year, and that is Candyman. Yeah, I mean, I love the original film. I think it's amazing. It's one of the best horror movies I've ever seen. So I was really pumped for this, and we got it delayed last year, and then we finally got it this year. Um, I really did like and appreciate the story direction they went in here. Not all of it worked, but a lot of it did. There's some great kills, um, and the way they're shot, they use mirrors a lot to do the kill scenes in this. Plays on the theme of mirrors because, of course, if you say Candyman 5 times in a mirror, he's going to come for you. And it all worked for me. There's an apartment kill scene, which was the best moment of the movie. By the end of the film, I didn't quite know what to think of the ending, but the more I think about it afterwards, the more it did actually work. I've done a full review on this and a full spoiler discussion on Paul's Tams's channel, where I do go into depth on this. So if you want to see my thoughts, I'll leave that down below. But Candyman it met my expectations. I didn't expect it to be anything better than the first movie, but it's a pretty solid horror film. So that is Candyman. Next up we have Free Guy. I thought this was going to be a very generic and silly movie going in, but I thought I'll go and watch it anyway. Ryan Reynolds in a big blockbuster, which takes place in a video game. Sounds like it's for me, but it did actually surprise me how much heart this movie had, how much I loved Ryan Reynolds' character, and how the whole world played out. It was just fun to see him and his friend walk down the street with a coffee and all these explosions are happening behind him like it's an everyday thing, and his bank gets robbed every single day. Overall, this is a really, really fun film with one of the best cameos I've ever seen in a movie. So that is Free Guy. Next up is the first Marvel movie we got from Phase 4, and that is Black Widow. I really enjoyed this one, actually. Thought it was a decent prequel movie, but I really liked the start of how she became this character to do with her family and stuff. I really, really liked how Florence Pugh was introduced into this, and it was really, really going great. It's the third act that kind of lets it down because it comes a little bit too much. Like there's this big sky fortress there and no one noticed it. That Ray Winston is kind of the main villain who controls this. And I was just like, oh, like are we meant to get on board with that? But everything else apart for this movie worked for me. I thought Scarlett Johansson was badass. And there's a helicopter scene here that takes place in this kind of jail where this character she has to save is in. And that was a brilliant action scene from Marvel. One of the best Marvel scenes I've seen in a long while. So, yeah, that is Black Widow. I liked it a lot more than other people, I think. Next up is Mortal Kombat. I love the video game franchise. I love the original film. And I was so pumped for this after seeing the trailer. I thought, oh, yeah, this is actually going to work for me. And it did in a lot of places. Bit strange that there is no Mortal Kombat tournament in this. But I really got on board with all these characters, especially Kano. I thought he was so funny in this movie. Sonya Blade was kick-ass. Jax, I loved the way his arms started to get better as the movie went on. Some great kills in this. Kung Lao, I think it's Kung Lao, yes. His spinning hat move that just chops someone in half. The fight with Goro and this main character that gets introduced, who I thought was a decent character, Cole. A lot of people said he was the worst part of the movie, but I thought he was a good character to introduce into this. He has this fight with Goro, that was great, and the fight at the end with Scorpion and Sub-Zero just worked for me. I loved the whole Scorpion story we had going here, kind of like Scorpion's Revenge, that animated movie, that all plays out in the background, and his rivalry with Sub-Zero, that all worked for me. I had a lot of fun with this movie. I went out and bought it in 4K in the end. So that is Mortal Kombat. Next up is Army of the Dead. Dave Bautista, who I love in a lot of movies. I just think he's such a fun actor. Him leading this film with all these other characters, it was kind of hard to get to grips with some of them, but there was a lot of them I did like. This all takes place in Las Vegas, and this crew have to go in and get something. I don't know, I can't remember quite now what they have to go and get. Is it money or something? I can't quite remember now. From this vault. And they take the character from the Army of Thieves, to help him get this vault open. But there's a lot of zombies there. Las Vegas is a no-go zone. And they have to go in and capture this thing from this safe. But there's zombies everywhere. And it plays a lot on the theme of Las Vegas. There's casinos all over the place, stuff like that. It's just a fun zombie movie. And I love the opening title credit scene here with Viva Las Vegas playing in the background and all these zombies when the outbreak actually happens. I thought this was a fun movie. I think a lot of people didn't really like this one, but I thought it was decent enough. So that is Army of the Dead. Next up is South Park Post-COVID, a late release in the year, and this sees Stan, Kyle, Kenny and Cartman as older. You know, they're like in the 50s, because this all takes place after the pandemic, and the pandemic is still happening. I thought this was a really clever story, actually. Good to see Kyle and Cartman still hating each other, but Kyle is a bigger asshole than Cartman nowadays. Yeah, you know, I had a lot of fun with it. I like seeing the characters older. I don't know if South Park have actually explored this before, because I haven't kept up to date with the show as often as I'd like to, but it was good to revisit and, you know, just have a lot of fun with this. Some really funny humour, some, you know, I really laughed at a lot of moments in this, so it's still got that magic, South Park. I used to love it as a kid, and it was good to revisit. So it kind of felt like I was revisiting it along with the characters as well, because the characters are much older, and I am now as well, and I hadn't seen it for that many years. But, you know, it takes the concept of something that's happening in the world today and puts it into this funny show. So that is South Park Post-COVID. Next up is Wrath of Man. I expected a lot from this, because Guy Ritchie had just come off the back of The Gentleman, which was my favourite film in 2020. I loved the trailer for this, and it was a decent movie. It's basically about this guy called H, who's a very mysterious character who gets a job at this cash trunk company where he's got to, you know, make cash travel and do these drop-offs of cash. But his van is ambushed a few times, but he knows how to deal with himself, and all these side characters can't quite get to grips with how good he is at handling a gun and stuff. And he never panics, he's always so calm. And yeah, I thought there was some great dialogue in here. I thought there was some great action scenes, and when we are revealed about the character of H halfway through, the movie does really go in a new direction, because we know so much about him then. And instead of revealing it at the end of the film, it actually worked the way it done it in the middle. The final 30 minutes does prolong a little bit too much, but overall I enjoyed this film. So that is Wrath of Man. Okay, number 20 now is West Side Story, a musical from a genre that isn't my favourite, yeah. But I really got on board with the story here. Steven Spielberg, back on the big screen. Loved all the characters in this. And it's basically about these two gangs who are going at it. I do feel like there's a little bit of poking fun at its own story there. The way they're just really intense and really fighting over this turf. But the music in here was great. All the choreographed dancing was awesome. Ultimately, a really good musical. You know, I did have a little bit of a problem with the set design though, and a lot of people saying the cinematography in this is great, but I just think it looked too much like a stage show at times. Now I know Steven Spielberg was probably going to go for that, and he's not going to do that by mistake, but for me it just didn't quite work. But I know it probably worked for a lot of people who appreciate this as a musical. But overall, a great film that does drag a little bit at the end, but you know, it's made my top 20. I really did like this film. Next up is Ron's Gone Wrong, and this is basically about everyone at this school has this robot that finds them friends and is in charge of their social media, lets them know if you've got a message, a like, a notification, and this one kid at school hasn't got one, and he's not very popular because of it, and then he ends up getting one that his dad finds off this, I think it dropped off a wagon or something, and there's something not quite right with this robot called Ron, and ultimately this is a movie about friendship, these two sort of connecting together. Thought this was a decent animated film actually. I missed it at the cinema, I had to watch it on Disney Plus, but when I seen the trailer I thought that looks like a really good movie. But yeah, it was just ultimately a friendship film that had a lot of heart and a lot of entertaining moments as well. So yeah, that is Ron's Gone Wrong at 19. Next up is Rocky vs Drago. Technically a 1985 film, but Stallone has put a lot of effort into this, and there's a lot more footage in this movie, and I don't want to say I prefer this over the theatrical cut of Rocky 4, because I've watched that movie so many times, but over time I do feel like this might be the one for me, because it's just more serious in tone. It fits with the rest of the franchise. The fight scenes seem a lot more dangerous for Rocky and Apollo, and even though you know what's going to happen to Apollo, you still fear the worst for him, because it's just built up a lot more. There's a lot more friendship involved between Rocky and Apollo. The extra few minutes of screen time they get really make them connect more. So you do feel like they are better friends than ever going by this movie. But I really enjoyed seeing all this new footage. A great director's cut from Sylvester Stallone. This stars Rocky 4, Rocky vs. Drago. Next up is The Eternals, another Marmite film that a lot of people didn't like. But for me, it kind of worked. I mean, there was a lot of stories to tell for a lot of characters here, and how they fitted it all in and made it work for me personally was a bit of a fiat. I mean, I thought the writers done a great job here. Really liked the story involving the Celestials and the planet about to be coming to its demise and stuff like that. But yeah, I like the way one character played on mental health involving Angelina Jolie's character. They were all a little bit different there. Different Marvel movie. It's not just straightforward action all the way through and stuff and all these funny humour. In fact, the humour is really toned down here. It's more of a serious movie in tone. But for me, it was very, very different in the tone of a Marvel movie, but it actually worked. I'm glad Marvel went in this direction and done something a little bit different here. And ultimately, I thought it was a great movie. I really enjoyed it, and it's somewhere in the middle of my Marvel ranking now, which isn't bad considering how many great movies they've made. So, number 17 is The Eternals. Number 16 is going to be Titan. Now, this was the most interesting character I think I watched all year. She's basically an antagonist, but she's in a car crash when she's a kid. She gets this metal plate stuck in her head and ultimately gets this fetish for metal and can't stop like touching cars and stuff. Now, I don't want to say too much about it, but the first 30 minutes of this, I thought it was going to be my film of the year. It does slow down in pace during the second and third act and sort of levels out, but it's still a good movie nonetheless. But I just loved the journey that Julia Ducournau took us with this character played by Agathe Roussel. It's just such a good performance from Agathe Roussel. Julia Ducournau has made this and Raw now two very unique movies that you've probably never seen before, and they were both really great. I did enjoy this a little bit more than Raw, but just a very strange, unique movie. I don't want to say too much about it, but definitely give it a watch. There's some haunting scenes in here too, some hard to watch moments, but I absolutely love Titan. So that is number 16. Number 15 is going to be Malignant, a new movie from James Wan, who decided not to do the Conjuring 3 and done this instead. Ultimately felt like the right decision for me. I really didn't know what to expect going in from this, but when the movie revealed itself in the third act, I thought, wow, that was, really clever. At first, when the movie finished, I was like, oh, I don't know about that. And on my way home in the car, I couldn't stop thinking about it, and then I realised how clever the film actually was. I can see why people don't like this, but I seem to get a lot more praise than people not liking it. I mean, I know people who've rewatched this and really appreciated it a lot more. But I can't go too much into the story details because it'll give too much away, basically. But I didn't see this reveal coming. A lot of people have said they did, but I didn't. I didn't see it coming at all. There's a moment in a police station later on that is one of the best movie moments of 2021 for me. An incredible movie from James Wan, and I really hope he does more like this in future instead of, just the typical haunted house movie. I know he's done a lot of different movies anyway, but this was one of his best films for me. So that is Malignant. Next up is The Mitchells vs. the Machines, one that I didn't see coming and being this good at all. But wow, this animation on this was unbelievable. It really made the film stand out. It's basically about this family in a robot apocalypse, and there's a lot of social media messages involved, kind of like the movie Ron's Gone Wrong there, but it gets its message across well. But ultimately it is the animation that makes this movie work so well. It looked unbelievable. It was a joy to watch. It was absolute eye candy, and I couldn't get enough of how good this movie was. I couldn't believe what I was watching at times, but there's a lot of entertaining moments. The Mitchells are great characters. I just had a really fun time with this. I didn't expect it to be this good because I seen the trailer at the cinema and just thought, oh, that looks okay. And then the pandemic hit. I totally forgot about it, and then it dropped on Netflix, and I just thought, oh yeah, there's that movie. I seen it at the cinema, yeah, oh yeah, I'll watch it. And I was blown away. I was so surprised at this film. So that is The Mitchells vs. the Machines. Next up is The Mauritanian. Now, this is a true story about this guy who is wrongly put in Guantanamo Bay because they think he has contacts to Osama bin Laden, just because his cousin, who works for Osama bin Laden, rang his phone once. And it's a very dark movie. You really do feel for this guy who's been wrongly imprisoned here. And you just want him to get out, but everything just keeps going worse for him, worse for him. And some of the torture scenes in here were brutal, but it was the story. I really got invested in this story, I really did. And Jodie Foster is kind of his lawyer who's trying to get him out of this situation. A really, really great drama, a really gripping film, and I haven't seen this very high on anyone's list, to be honest, but I thought it was absolutely brilliant. One of my favourite movies of the year. Just didn't quite crack my top 10, but this is on Amazon Prime, I believe. It's definitely worth a watch. That is The Mauritanian. Number 12, we do have The Suicide Squad. Now, James Gunn made such an enjoyable movie here. It's great characters that we don't really know, but we have now loved them because of this film, like King Shark, voiced by Sylvester Stallone. I love that guy. Polka Dot Man, who fires polka dots, and that's his special weapon. But there's some funny moments in here, but some very violent moments as well. It's the ultimate adult R-rated comic book movie. Yeah, I mean, it's a very generic story, but it's the characters that make it work. I mean, they basically just go into this place to get something as this team, but the characters, the dialogue, and all the unique attributes that they have make the movie work in its favour. So it didn't really need to have this mad story, although the third act does go in some very strange directions there and pulls no punches. But James Gunn is just having the time of his life with these characters, you can tell. I thought this was a really fun and entertaining film. Idris Elba really led this film well as well, I thought. So yeah, some great cinematography moments as well with Harley Quinn, with this, she's kind of firing this gun, but there's all flowers coming out of it instead of bullets, and it just looked great. Cinematography was awesome. A really funny, violent, and brilliant comic book movie, and it's The Suicide Squad. Just missing out on the top 10, in 11th place here is Ghostbusters Afterlife. Now, I'm so happy that they went in this direction. I think the location change from New York really benefited this movie, all taking place on this farmhouse that Harold Ramis, Egon, of course, has given to his family, this cottage, and then this ghost, all these ghosts are breaking out and, you know, trying to sort of take over the world again here, and it's up to these young kids who are the new set of Ghostbusters, basically, who find all the old equipment and stuff to take them on. Mackenzie, what was her name? Was it McKenna Grace, I believe her name was. The young actress in this movie, she was absolutely, she stole, I'm just going to look, McKenna Grace, she was absolutely brilliant in this. She stole the show as Egon Spengler's granddaughter. She was one of the best child performances I've seen all year, in fact ever. But really like the ghosts and stuff, like Muncher, his name is, he's like the new Slimer. I thought that was a really fun chase scene with him. But this has a very emotional ending. I'm not going to go too much into it in case you haven't seen it, but the ending of this film touched a lot of hearts, and Ghostbusters fans, I think, will be very satisfied with this because it is the ultimate fan service done right. Good decision as well, like Paul Rudd, he's just more of a side character in this, but it really works. He doesn't take centre stage, and he didn't have to, but it was good to have him in there. He really fits into the Ghostbusters franchise, I feel. But yeah, I really enjoyed Ghostbusters After. I thought it was brilliant and the best they could have done with this new direction. And it does set it up for another one, which I would love to see. So, as Ghostbusters Afterlife. Okay guys, I'm not going to spend too long on these at all because I've already done a top 10 video. So if you want to check that out, that'll be down below in the description where I go into a little bit more detail of these movies. But number 10 is Raya and the Last Dragon. Great movie from Disney. Love the locations. Raya, a great strong protagonist. And I really love the dragon voiced by Awkwafina. But really lot in the heart of this movie. So that is Raya and the Last Dragon at number 10. Number 9 is The Last Duel from Ridley Scott. A great true story that takes place from 3 different perspectives, so you see 3 sides of the story here from 3 different characters. Great, great action scenes, great dialogue, great performances, especially Jodie Comer, and it's a shame this bombed at the box office, but this is on Disney Plus. I highly recommend you check it out. It was fascinating to me. Number 8 is Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, a character I hardly knew anything about, and now I love and want to see more of. A great Marvel movie that incorporates a lot of kung fu into it, a lot of martial arts, and it really paid off. I absolutely loved this film. Yeah, I mean, I can't wait to see more of Shang-Chi, like I said, but there's some great action moments in here, like on a bus and on this scaffold construction site. Some of the best moments of the year, but ultimately a great martial arts Marvel movie. Number 7 is Last Night in Soho from Edgar Wright. Two great performances from Thomasin McKenzie and Anya Taylor-Joy, who is my favourite actress working today. Loved watching this story unfold, the whole mysterious aspect to it really worked for me. I wanted to put this so much higher because I loved the original concept of it, but Last Night in Soho, definitely give it a watch when you can. Number 6 is A Quiet Place Part 2, a great sequel to the first movie. I'm very happy my audience was very quiet during this because it just added so much tension to the film. Looked visually stunning, kind of reminded me of the Last of Us video game, and I hope the HBO miniseries take inspiration from this because it looked exactly like the Last of Us should. Great performance from Emily Blunt. Cillian Murphy is a great character to add to this. The young deaf girl, I'm really sorry I forgot her name, was really deaf, and you could really tell with this movie. John Krasinski is a great director. I hope he does part 3. There's talk that he won't, but I hope he does. And this had one of the best opening scenes all year. So that is Quiet Place Part 2. Number 5 is a big surprise for me, and that was Cruella. Unbelievable performance from Emma Stone and Emma Thompson, who's the main villain of this, and it's an origin story about Cruella de Vil and how she becomes Cruella, basically. But great, great hair and makeup design, great cinematography, all taking place in the punk rock era of the 70s in London. The whole film is about fashion, and the fashion theme is really in there, the way the characters dress and stuff. But a great prequel to 101 Dalmatians, so that is Cruella. Number 4 is Spider-Man No Way Home. I think this made more money than any other movie on this list this year. So entertaining throughout. Just one of the most hilarious Marvel movies. I love these characters now, Ned, Peter Parker and MJ, this little trio. Absolutely love them. The fan service was all done right. So many great moments. The cinema was gasping and cheering, and I have never really experienced the cinema like that before. So it was just great. Such an entertaining film. I love Spider-Man movies, and this is one of the best. So that's Spider-Man No Way Home. Number 3 is No Time to Die. I'm not the biggest James Bond fan in the world, but I really got into this one, and it's on par now with Casino Royale for me for the best Bond movie from the Daniel Craig era. I just thought it was pretty damn perfect, and a perfect send-off to Daniel Craig, to be honest. I thought Rami Malek was a great villain, wish he was in the movie a little bit more. Another great opening scene here, so many great action moments. And the final line of this movie was probably my favourite line or quote of the entire year, but so many great moments, great Bond movie. Yeah, I absolutely loved it. Number 2 is Zack Snyder's Justice League, the biggest surprise of the entire year for me. I was blown away by this. I'd never seen the other Justice League because I just had no interest after seeing Batman vs Superman, but now I've got a YouTube channel. I decided to watch it because I know a lot of people were going to be reviewing this, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to watch it. And I was dreading this 4-hour runtime, but it absolutely blew me away. One of the best superhero movies I have ever seen. Everything worked for it. It was just amazing. I'm so glad Zack Snyder got this version out and made it his own. So that is Zack Snyder's Justice League. And number 1 is going to be Nobody, starring Bob Odenkirk. Kind of like a John Wick film with this average Joe, but all the fight scenes are very grounded. He's not the perfect fighter or anything, which makes this movie work so well. I absolutely love this film. I just had so much fun with it from start to finish. Hardly any problems whatsoever with this movie, and deserves its spot as this number 1. And I'm so glad this original concept has become my number 1 film of the year, and it's not like a reboot or a prequel or anything. I'm not saying they're bad, but it's just nice to see something new and fresh make my number 1. So that is Nobody. Okay guys, hope you all enjoyed this ranking movie of the year. Now I know there was some movies on this list that I haven't seen, like House of Gucci, Antlers is another one, Licorice Pizza I haven't seen, Don't Look Up, from the new movie on Netflix. I'm really sorry there was some that aren't included here, but I just haven't watched every movie that I can. But I have reviewed all these movies that I'm talking about, and they will be down below in the description. I hope to catch up on House of Gucci and stuff at some point. But if you want to see my ranking and when I add any 2021 movies to this that I do watch in future, you can go and see my ranking list, and I'm doing a ranking list for 2022 as well. So my Letterboxd will be down below if you want to check out all that good stuff. and my reviews are also down there for every single one of these films. So thanks so much, guys. I hope you all enjoyed the video. And what did you think of this, Frank? And let me know and I'll reply to you all, I promise. Take it all easy, guys. I'll see you all next video.